Hello and welcome back to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy, where this week we are doing Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So this one was not originally on my planned schedule because I wasn't planning on it. I didn't even think that it was coming out until much later, but nope, boom, here it is. So, decided to go watch it today. This is Friday, the Friday before I post this episode, and it's not bad. It's pretty good, but yeah. So it is a sequel, a direct sequel to the legacy sequel of Ghostbusters Afterlife. And in this direct sequel, it includes a nice wide variety of the characters that you've seen before. So, yeah, it's a nice way to let them play around with the characters more in an actual, Ghostbusters setting. But, yeah, overall, it's not bad. It's pretty good. So, it follows on, I want to say, a couple of years after Afterlife. And it is following the grandchildren and daughter of Dr. Ian Spengler, and I guess their now stepfather, because in the previous movie he was their teacher, went on a date with their mom, they ended up becoming the gatekeeper and the keymaster, and at least I think that's who they are, and they're the ones that brought Zool into the world. You know, it was like a soft remake of the original Ghostbusters, but as a legacy sequel. With, of course, old characters coming in and whatnot. It was nice. So they, I guess, got married at some point in between there. It's not really ever stated whether or not they actually did. It's just heavily implied. And they have been kind of running a family-run Ghostbusters sect out of the original fire station. Now, the movie actually opens with a flashback to 1904, when the fire station was a fire station, and they are responding to a call about, well, the opposite of a fire? Because they go to the Manhattan Adventurers Guild, or Adventurers Society, or whatever they're called, Adventurers Club, and they discover that, it's cold. Everyone's frozen solid. And when they go to this weirdly armored person in the corner holding a ball, they, wake up and everyone in the room explodes. That was frozen, at least. Explodes, and then boom, title card. So, then we see how the now kind of family-run sect of Ghostbusters is going. By the way, real quick, it seems that they made an offshoot production company specifically to handle Ghostbusters media, so I'm assuming that they are planning on doing more Ghostbusters-esque media, as they now have a company called Ghost Corp, and I think it's to handle movies and video games, because they did release a couple of video games recently, and probably comic books and whatnot. We'll see what they end up actually doing with it. Before this movie came out, they did talk about how it's supposed to, it has kind of the feel of the cartoon that came out after the movies. And I actually remember the cartoon, and it was very fun because it had the blonde Egon, which was funny. But overall, it was a very fun cartoon. And I will say that the movie does actually kind of capture some of that essence. It kind of succeeds in that, with this whole kind of family dynamic going on with the Ghostbusters. So, they were given the keys to the original firehouse to kind of act as Ghostbusters and kind of be stewards of that fire station. So they were given it by Winston, Ernie Hudson's character, and have been operating as the new Ghostbusters. So they are out on a job chasing down a ghost. It's the Hell's Kitchen sewer dragon, I think is what they called it. And in doing so, they, of course, do what Ghostbusters do, cause massive property damage. So they are dragged in by the mayor of New York and are, dressed down. Especially for the fact that one of them, Phoebe, we'll say Phoebe, is underage. So she must be technically demoted from official Ghostbuster to something like junior Ghostbuster or something non-action seeing, as it's a danger for her and she is technically a liability. Now, she is a bit of a liability because she makes brash decisions, and she's being an absolute dick to her mom, stating that her mom, well, later on in the film, she states that her mom, if she wasn't a Spangler, she would be the one answering the phones, which is mean. Like, one, yeah, sure, all the others on the original Ghostbusters team, except for Ernie, except for Winston, were, like, doctors and whatnot. But at the same time, like, one of them was a bit of a goofball, one of them was an aloof asshole, and then one was an eccentric, sciencey guy. They had their archetypes that they fit into. And the mom is fine. She kind of fits the Winston role, kind of. Even though technically they're kind of setting up her brother to kind of be the Winston-ish role. It's all over the place, to be honest. But, anywho. So, after that, they are forced to kind of put her on the back burner, or the back bench, in order to, not get into a lot of trouble with the city. Also, they're having a bit of an issue with the containment unit. So the original containment unit is really full. They didn't think about, storage space when they were first installing it. They thought, there's not that many ghosts, I guess. It's not like, people have been dying since the beginning of time. It's fine. So, they have to deal with that. They can't really fit any new ghosts in there. So they need to figure out something. Meanwhile, Dan Aykroyd's character, Ray Stantz, is working at like this kind of pawn shop thing, running a YouTube channel with a kid from Afterlife. His nickname's Podcast. And the gimmick of the YouTube channel is that Ray Stantz will look at your family heirlooms and whatnot and see if a ghost is attached to it. If there is a ghost attached to it, he'll take it off your hands. If there isn't, it gets smashed by a hammer. That's the gimmick. So, he checks this artifact, or it's a watch that belonged to her husband, and she's felt that in recent times it will beep whenever she enters a room, how she feels, signifying that her husband is there. But when it's scanned, it doesn't work. It gets smashed by the hammer. Then he is brought in a box of artifacts by Camille Nanjiani's character, Nadim, who brings in a box of artifacts from his recently deceased grandmother. And when Dan Aykroyd's character, and when Ray is going through all the artifacts, he comes across the sphere that we saw at the beginning of the movie. And he's like, oh, well, now this is interesting because it has all this, like, words written all over it. And when he scans it, it immediately has a reaction on the scanner and pretty much melts the scanner. It also causes some kind of seismic activity that kind of seems to damage the containment unit further. Because for some reason, it is targeting specifically the containment unit. We are kind of explained as to why, but yeah. Then Winston comes in, as he's kind of now running this new Ghostbusters organization thing, and has his man Lars, who is he kind of is replacing the Ian Spangler character, like at least the eccentrics. In fact, his character design reminds me of blonde-haired Ian Spangler from the cartoon, so it works really well. But anywho, he comes in, takes a look at it, and they're like, yeah, no, it's full. We didn't really think about it at the time, and they're like, well, can't we build another one? And they're like, what? Oh, you weren't told? Turns out they already did build another one. They didn't tell them for some reason. They didn't get around to it. Who knows? So they go tour this new facility where it turns out they're actually keeping ghosts in containment using science-y stuff. Basically, it's a version of the proton pack. It creates a field around the glass to prevent the ghosts from going through it and whatnot. So it contains the ghosts. You know, hand wavy, it just works. It's fine. Which makes you think, this is going to be like a Jurassic Park situation, isn't it? Where, oh no, the ghosts got out. But yeah, they're doing it for research, and they've created this big old machine that can suck the ghosts out of haunted objects. So it sucks the ghost out, pops it into a trap, and then you can put it into a new containment unit. And just so happens that this containment unit's so big. It's all good. So they're like, cool. And Phoebe does ask a question that kind of gets glossed over, but becomes kind of a major plot point later. And she asks, has it been tested on, like, living possession? And Lars Pinfield says, no, but in theory it should work, question mark. But that's where it's kind of left. So, while Phoebe has been benched, she must figure out something to do. She's bored. She wants to hunt ghosts. So she goes to play chess by herself in the park. Not the smartest choice, especially since she does it in the middle of the night. But she goes out to the park, sets up the chess, and starts playing, but the pieces are moving by themselves. So she keeps playing, and it turns out she's playing a ghost. The ghost's name is Melody, and she was burned alive by a fire that was lit on accident that killed her family and her. Her family was able to move on, but she wasn't. She, according to Phoebe, got lucky because, she doesn't look like, she is permanently on fire in her ghost form. She doesn't, look all burnt and crispy, and she's like, oh yeah, I died before it burnt my face. But, they're hanging out, having a nice chat. She's able to ask questions about what it's like being dead and whatnot. And they have a pretty good time. Then the ghost disappears. Then later, Phoebe, in a need to ghost bust, and because they got a call while the main team was out, answers a call, and it turns out it's Melody hanging out in a diner. Presumably a diner that was burned down on accident. We don't get her full backstory. We can only just kind of assume what her backstory is. It's fine. Presumably she was doing something, smoking or whatever, accidentally burned down her family's diner and died along the way. Then she had unfinished business of some sort and is just kind of hanging around. But Phoebe, according to her, has pretty good aim and missed on purpose and hangs out with the ghost for a bit. Shows her around the Ghostbusters headquarters and just kind of has a bit of a chat. And she's starting to develop a curiosity of, what would it be like to be a ghost? So, yeah. But she leaves, or the ghost leaves, and questions are left up in the air. And the research section of the Ghostbusters is researching the ball that Ray brought in. And when they're trying to suck the ghost out of it, it doesn't quite work and knocks the power out, and the ghosts start trying to escape. But luckily the generators are able to be rebooted, and everything's fine. It's okay. The ball's just really, really cold. So, after that incident, Ray, Phoebe and Podcast go out to investigate what's going on with the situation, like the ball. And during one of the tests with the ball, where it seems that whatever's inside the ball is controlling the ghosts around it, they are able to pick up a recording of like words, but they don't know what the words are. So they go to see what's going on with the words, and they go to see Dan's friend in the library. Meanwhile, another team goes off with Finn and Lars, goes off to find Nadim to figure out what's going on with him. Like, where did he get it? Why did he give it away? What's the issue? And it turns out that his family is a long line of fire masters. Basically, and especially from what we see in the movie, a group of firebenders that worked together to capture this ghost god and trap it in the ball. And him selling it has kind of led to all of this happening. So he now must learn to harness his power and control the fire to be able to rein in the ghost king thing. So, but first, they learn this by scanning him and then taking him to Dr. Vinkman in order to see what's up with him. And as his emotion rises and whatnot, the fire behind him rises. So it shows that he does have some control over fire. Meanwhile, the library team discovers, pretty much discovers the backstory of the fire masters and whatnot, and how the God King or Ghost King was trapped in a thing because he wanted to freeze the world, and so they have to keep it safe. And just so happens that those Adventure Club weirdos, the reason that they got frozen is because they played a record, well, not a record, a wax cylinder with a recording of the chant that opens the ball. And I'm guessing what happened is they played the chant, frozen, then the Firemaster in 1904 came, resealed the ghost in the ball, and I guess it was a tough fight because they were kind of knocked out while holding the sealing ball when the firefighters arrived. So that's what happened in 1904. Then they, while they're listening to it, get accosted by one of the ghosts from the containment units that escaped when that test that showed that the ball was controlling the ghosts was going on. It froze the containment unit that let that specific ghost, which is like the possessor, out, and it followed them and possessed the cylinder, put it into a trash bag, possessed the trash bag, and fled the library. They chased it, found the trash bag in with the lion. It controlled the lion. Phoebe destroyed the lion and the wax cylinder, stopping that plan. But she gets pinned by the police and the mayor for destroying a New York icon, one of the library lions. And she gets dressed down by everyone, even though she did stop the ghost technically. And she's told by the mayor, either, behave or get arrested. She chooses get arrested. And it's at this point where one of the subplots, so there's two main subplots kind of, or theme plots running through the movie. So there's Phoebe and wanting to be seen as a competent member of the Ghostbusters and not so much as a child. One of those classic coming-of-age plot lines. And then there's Paul Rudd's subplot of trying to understand his role in this new family dynamic, as he's kind of the odd one out. Especially since it's not really stated whether or not him and their mom actually got married. They still have separate last names, it would seem. And at the end, he states that, well, regardless, they should stick with Spangler because they don't want to be a Gooberson. So, yeah, it's questionable as to what his actual relationship to them is. Like, he tells their mom, like, I don't know if I should, reprimand the kids and whatnot. I don't know if that's overstepping my bounds. And she gives him permission to reprimand them. But even after being given permission, he still finds it awkward to try and actually do that, because he doesn't really want to be seen as the bad guy. But he understands that he needs to support his partner. So, in the prison scene, he finally snaps and lays into Phoebe saying, hey, we're doing everything we can to protect you. Like, the reason that we followed the mayor's orders, the reason that we're making you wait, is because we are trying to keep you safe from situations exactly like this. And at that, she runs away. So the mayor took the destruction of the library lion as grounds to confiscate everything in the firehouse sect of the Ghostbusters. Pretty much doing exactly what he did in, I think it's Ghostbusters 2? Well, I think it's Ghostbusters 1 and 2, honestly. And, yeah, pretty much that. They break back in to, get their stuff, their clothes and whatnot. Well, Phoebe flees to talk to her ghost friend. They break into the research division of Ghostbusters, and Phoebe, because she wants to be able to experience being a ghost and being in the same dimension, plane, or whatever as Melody. And this is where we need to discuss technically the subplot of her thing, because not only does she want to be seen as like a competent Ghostbuster, she wants someone to actually be able to understand her, and she feels that the only person that is able to understand her is Melody. Now, whether or not this relationship is being seen as her just having a nice friendship with the ghost, or if it's something more romantic, is never really explained. Because when she leaves her body and walks up to Melody, it feels like it's supposed to be like a kind of romantic scene, but because Melody is set up to betray her, because the Ghost King needs a human voice to perform the chant, and since the ghost can't do it, they needed Phoebe to pull herself out of the body so that she could be controlled as a ghost, to control her original body, to say the chant, to open the orb, to release the ghost. That's the whole plan with Phoebe. The reason that Melody decided to betray Phoebe is because she wants to see her family. Her whole thing is that she wants to be able to see her family because she's been separated from them since she died. And the only way she feels that she can do that is by crossing over, and the Ghost King has, I guess, bribed her with the claimed ability to open rifts between realms so that she could pass through. And that's why she accepted the deal. But, yeah, so the time limit, because supposedly you can set a time limit for how long something is separated from its object, I guess. Because she sets a time limit, is pulled from her body, has 2 minutes of ghost time, is possessed, says the chant, releases the ghost god, and time limit up, goes back to her body. One of the characters from the other movie, who doesn't get a whole lot of play in this movie, Lucky, who's Trevor's, or Finn Wolfhard's character's girlfriend? ? Again, relationships are very non-committal. Like, who's with who and whatnot is never fully specified. It doesn't necessarily need to. Like, whether or not there's any kind of romance subplot or whatnot going on here, well, technically there isn't, because they don't ever commit to anything like that. Just vague vague implications, but never anything really set in stone. But she comes in, tries to save Phoebe, but turns out this guy's so powerful he can freeze the proton pack blasts. So, shit. But instead of killing anyone, the Ghost King just leaves. Because he's a man on a mission. He wants to freeze the world, but to do that he needs the horns that were ripped from his head. And also he needs to kill the Fire Master. So first he goes to a place called Fire Master Vapes and asks, "Are you the Fire Master?" To which the guy's like, "Yeah, read the sign," and then gets promptly murdered. Then he goes to Nadim's apartment, gets his horns back, and then starts freezing the city. Now, I would think that the implication of that would be that many people died in the freezing of the city. Especially, say, the people that were in the Ferris wheel and whatnot when the city froze, because the ice spread really fast. Though, it is heavily implied that, no, he didn't decide to freeze everyone for some reason. And if they were frozen, they were fine, I guess. Because, literally, in the big climactic battle, which is relatively small in comparison to, like, Ghostbusters 1 or 2, or even Ghostbusters Afterlife to an extent, even though Ghostbusters Afterlife was, small town, it was still like they fought Zool. In this, it's all confined mostly to the fire station. And while everyone is fighting the ghosts, well, before there's the big fight with the ghosts, Phoebe comes up with a plan. Because they don't have access to copper, they'll use the brass fire pole in order to amp up one of the power packs and use that to blast the ghost. But instead of joining her family to fight the one ghost that they're trying to use it on and weaken it, she hangs out in the basement and talks to Melody and asks, like, "Hey, like, why? Like, I understand you want to see your family, but my family's up there trying to fight for their lives. Like, not cool." And she's like, "Oh, you'll understand sometime," or whatever. It's too late. He's here. Wah. Whoops. And Phoebe tries to explain to her, like, yeah, he probably doesn't have the power to actually do that. You have to do it yourself. You have to resolve your business and move on. And then she continues to hang out down there while her family literally fights the ghosts upstairs. And all of them get frozen. Only after that does Phoebe actually go upstairs, use the new modified proton pack on the main ghost, and it works. It's actually working, except for, like, not fully. But then Melody, in a, I guess, last minute reversal, takes the singular match that she had in a matchbook, strikes it, lights the fire. Then Nadim is able to bend the fire and use it to control the ghost. And that's able to thaw everyone out. Phoebe then, after herself having been frozen, is able to recharge her proton pack, also holds onto the ghost, while everyone else, everyone in her family comes together to help her control the thing, while all the legacy characters go downstairs to try to reverse the destruction of the containment unit, because the ghost god came in and broke the containment unit up. All the ghosts fleed. Classic Ghostbusters thing. Happens every time. But they get freed. They're able to reverse it and turn it into a giant trap, trapping the Ghost King in the thing. And boom, plot resolved. She calls Paul Rudd Dad. They're able to force the mayor into praising them and get the mayor off their back because, hey, they just saved the city. And Phoebe was a big help in that, so she needs to be able to work with us. So she's seen as a proper Ghostbusters. He got dad status, I guess. And yay, plots are resolved. The podcast had a fan. Yay. And Melody does move on, leaving Phoebe her now empty, I guess, box of matches. So that's the movie. There's a post-credits scene that's just kind of a jokey thing, where the little mini Stay Puft Marshmallow Men who return in this film and are like rats now, I guess, because they were smuggled to Ray's shop and they've been like multiplying, and they hijack a Stay Puft truck, I guess, and yeah, that's that. That was the movie. Overall, it was pretty good, except for some of the moments where it's just like, what? Like when, this thing that's sole purpose is supposed to be just ripping out the ghost out of objects can now be used to rip the ghost out of you. But you can set a time limit, as long as you, I guess, don't hook in a, whatchamacallit, a trap into the thing. You can be reverted back into your body / the object that you were pulled from, I guess. That, and then the fact that she went through all the effort of upgrading her proton pack to be able to fight the one specific ghost. Literally all the other proton packs are mainly for the other ghosts that they were expecting to have escaped or were going to escape. And the whole point was for her pack to be used against the main ghost, but she decides to hang out in the fucking basement and let everyone else who can't do anything to fight the main ghost deal with the main ghost. But that's kind of my biggest complaint. Otherwise, it's pretty good. I do wish that they kind of nailed things down a little bit better. Like, give some of the other side characters a little bit more to do. What is the actual relationship between Paul Rudd's character and their mom? They're probably married now. At the very least, they've been dating and cohabitating for long enough that they're common law married. ? What was the relationship with the ghost? Was it just friendly or was it more? Who knows? It doesn't matter, I guess. Because she was a ghost. But, yeah, overall, it's pretty good. I would say definitely give it a look if you're interested. If you enjoyed Afterlife and you wanted it set a little bit more in an actual like Ghostbusters feel, then do that. If you enjoyed the old 80s, 90s cartoon, the new Ghostbusters, give that a look. Give it a look because of that, because it does kind of have that feel. Do I think that they should do more with this? Yeah, probably. They could probably do more with it. It's going to be kind of hard for them to keep generating potential conflict. I think it would be interesting to show more, essentially. It'd be interesting to see, for example, if they were able to make an international Ghostbusters. That would be kind of cool. Or if, just see more. Flesh it out. Don't do like what Ghostbusters 2 did, where they built up and they were big, and then they became has-beens for the sequel for some reason. And then at the end they're big, and then they immediately disappear again according to the new Ghostbusters stuff, like Afterlife and whatnot. They almost immediately re-retired, and so it's just this kind of nebulous thing where Ghostbusters comes back and then leaves and then comes back and then leaves. Like, at least with this movie, from the get-go, they were Ghostbusters. They began the movie as Ghostbusters, and they ended the movie as Ghostbusters. And even when they were technically had to limit some of their activities, they were still Ghostbusters. They were doing the Ghostbusting. It was good. But that's that. Like I said, I recommend it. With that said, we'll go ahead and leave it there. Next week is going to be the new Godzilla movie. Godzilla, Kong, New Empire? Yeah, 2 Empire subtitled movies. Yay. In a row! But yeah, so next week is going to be Godzilla Kong, and feel free to check out the challenge updates over on RPG Hangout. We're still playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and not only that, but next week will also be Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Fingers crossed, it will be the last one. That's part of the reason why I'm recording this episode now. I'm recording it now, and I'm going to try to edit it now, so that it can be out in a decent time. But with that said, feel free to check that out over on the RPG Hangout feed. That is on any podcast catcher of your choice. Also on any podcast catcher of your choice is this podcast, where you can rate and review it and share it with your friends. But if you're more of a YouTube podcast listener, feel free to like and subscribe on the YouTube version of this episode. But with that said, once again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys next week. Goodbye.